Okay, next chapter. Chapter 19. Dragon Tamer. By the time Kendra had started across the drawbridge with her companions, the entire sky had gone cloudy. The gray ceiling directly above the sanctuary looked lighter than the murk surrounding Wormroost. But flurries of snowflakes had begun to fall, pushed by inconstant breezes. When Kendra cast her eyes beyond the rainbow barrier, the snowfall outside the sanctuary looked much heavier. Kendra glanced regretfully back at the wall enclosing the Blackwell Keep. She and her friends were out in the open now, vulnerable. Back at the hotel, Gavin had related how dragons viewed people much as people saw mice. At the moment, she felt like a mouse dropped into a cage of snakes. Within the boundaries of Wormroost, dragons or other mystical predators could await beneath any tree, inside any cave, beyond any rise. No viable shelter remained. It was only a matter of time before they attracted attention. They started up the slope, moving in a loose cluster. Tanu had given her a lozenge for her throat, but it still felt raw. As Blackwell Keep shrank behind them, Kendra watched the others. With his long, purposeful strides, Trask seemed determined and confident. Tanu and Mara wore more serious, thoughtful expressions. Dugan appeared calm, as if on a casual stroll to enjoy nature. Warren repeatedly tossed a stick in the air, apparently trying to see how many times he could spin it over and end over end before catching it. Gavin brought up the rear, anxiously rubbing his palms with his thumbs, eyes in constant motion. They passed beneath tall cedars and pines, the capricious wind stirring the limbs overhead. Beneath the trees, Kendra saw dry accumulations of old needles, tangles of twigs, a few jutting boulders, and periodic patches of old, dirty snow. The tiny flakes falling at the moment were not sticking to the ground. In fact, under the trees, not many flakes managed to reach the forest floor. "Should we break out the puppet?" Warren asked. Might as well have a Mendigo scout for threats. He does no good in the back knapsack. "We'll pause at the top of this ridge and get him out," Trask said. Toward the top of the ridge, the terrain grew steep. Kendra used both hands while scrambling to the crest. On the far side, the ground fell away even more sharply. The snow flurries had ended for the moment, although the breeze had picked up. Above them loomed higher ridges and hills. Stony spines, wooded ledges, rocky faces, and eventually the bald, sheer cliffs of Stormcrag. Off to the left and farther away, Moonfang soared into the sky, the summit obscured in mellow gray clouds. Kendra recalled looking down on the sanctuary from the helicopter, as well as the map at Blackwell Keep. Using the mounting ranks of high ground for references, she tried to visualize some of the unseen ravines, valleys, meadows, streams, and lakes. "Look across the gulf," Dugan said. A dark, lumbering shape emerged from the trees on the next ridge over. Built like a bear, the creature had the shaggy fur of a yak and a thick hawk-like beak. The beast reared onto its hind legs, standing twice the height of any grizzly, and emitted a sound halfway between a screech and a roar. "What is it?" Kendra whispered. "Not sure," Trask muttered. "Might be past time we got our weapons out." Trask and Warren opened the knapsack and descended into the storeroom. The bear-like monstrosity continued up the opposing ridge and then disappeared over the far side, swishing a hairless tail with a bulbous knob at the end. "Look above the shoulder of Stormcrag," Mara said, eyes skyward. Kendra followed her gaze and saw two distant silhouettes reeling through the air, widespread wings canting sharply. They lacked the long beaks and tails of dragons, but the airborne creatures were large, with 4 legs. "Griffins," Tanu said. As they watched the creatures swoop and circled acrobatically, then they plunged out of sight together. "They found prey," Dugan commented. A minute or two later, Trask and Warren emerged from the knapsack, followed by Mendigo, the golden hooks of his joints jingling. Besides carrying his huge crossbow, Trask wore a pair of matching swords across his back and twin daggers at his waist. Warren held the sword he had claimed at Lost Mesa. Mendigo toted a 8-foot spear and a heavy battle axe. Mara took the spear, and Dugan accepted the axe. "No weapons for you guys?" Kendra asked Tanu and Gavin. Tanu twisted, showing Kendra the blowgun tucked in his belt. "Sleeping darts and potions for me." Gavin twirled his walking stick. "This will do for now. Avoidance will be our best friend, but it's good to be armed in case of smaller threats." "Like giant bears," Kendra said. He grinned. "Exactly." "Mendigo," Warren said, "scout our perimeter. Don't range too far from us. Alert us of any possible threats. Don't let any creatures take us unawares. Our goal is to avoid encounters. Should trouble break out, guard Kendra as your first priority, then the rest of us. Get her into the knapsack if the danger becomes extreme. Our first goal is to flee conflicts, but use violence in our protection as required. As a last resort, if you must kill to protect us, do it." The wooden humanoid bobbed his head and skipped down the far side of the ridge, moving with loose, jangling grace. Kendra soon lost sight of him under the trees. "We'll follow this ridgeline for a time," Mara said. "Then drop into a wooded valley." "Off we go," Trask said, resting his great crossbow over one shoulder. The hike took them across a variety of terrain. They picked their way across stony scree, forded narrow brooks, traversed brushy meadows, and skirted an oblong lake. Near a shaded pond, they fell flat behind a fallen log as a dragon-like creature with black wings, 2 scaly legs, and scorpion's tail, and a wolfish head guzzled down gallons of water. They saw more griffins wheeling high above, but never up close. At one point, near the crest of the hill, Mara pointed out a column of dark smoke rising in the distance. As the night fell, they took shelter in a shallow gully against a concave wall of clay beneath a rocky outcrop. Mara built a campfire, and they ate well from the plentiful stores in the knapsack. Tin-foil dinners of salty beef and vegetables, complemented by dried fruit and applesauce. After the meal, they broke out graham crackers, chocolate bars, and marshmallows, and made gooey s'mores. Gavin and Tanu let their marshmallows catch fire and ate them charred, but Kendra preferred to patiently roast hers to a golden brown. Warren offered to set up a small dome tent for Kendra, but the others were content sliding their well-insulated sleeping bags into waterproof bivouacs, so that she opted for a bivouac as well. Despite having Mendigo prowl the area as a sleepless sentry, they decided to keep watch one at a time as well. Dugan mentioned that they might take shelter in the knapsack, but Warren pointed out that they could get cornered inside and should consider the knapsack as a last resort. Kendra took the first watch. She sat beside the coals of the banked fire, staring out into the dimness of the surrounding trees as sporadic snow continued to fall, still not noticeably sticking to the ground. She tried not to dwell on what terrors might patrol the night beyond her field of view. Hopefully, Mendigo would alert her before anything deadly came too close. Midway through her watch, fierce growls reached her ears, echoing along the gully. Branches snapped and stones tumbled. It took several minutes to relax after the vicious snarls subsided. Later, when Dugan came to relieve her, the air grew calm, and they listened together to the slow beats of huge wings high above them, like the rhythmic flapping of some enormous tarp. The next morning dawned cold and frost-crusted. Clouds still ringed Wormroost, but no longer formed a solid ceiling, nor retained such threatening color. After her watch, Kendra had slept quicker and better than expected. The hot chocolate Tanu had prepared helped her gain the courage to abandon the toasty cocoon of her sleeping bag. Kendra plopped in a marshmallow and watched it melt into foam as she sipped. The beverage had been made with powdered milk from Fablehaven in order to keep magical creatures visible for the others. Throughout the morning and early afternoon, Mara led the way. She had an uncanny knack for keeping the map of Wormroost in her mind and matching it to the surrounding landscape. Whenever debates arose regarding which direction they should head, they relied on her judgment as the final word, and invariably they would encounter a landmark that proved her intuition right. They crossed a ravine on a natural bridge of stone. They traveled through a defile too narrow for two of them to walk abreast, a thin strip of sky visible high above. They crept around the edge of the tranquil valley, crossed by a winding brook, hoping to avoid the attention of the basilisks who, according to Agad, resided there. Having snacked throughout the hike, they stopped for a late lunch on a craggy hilltop. Stunted conifers covered the shoulders of the hill, but only jagged boulders crowned the summit. Huddled among the stones, Kendra ate a sandwich, a slightly overripe banana, and a hearty granola bar. She drank 2 boxes of fruit punch through tiny straws. As they were packing up lunch, Mendigo came clattering across the rocky hilltop, pointing back the way he had come. The puppet waved for them to run the other way. As they were swiftly chimmying up between 2 boulders, shielding her eyes with a long brown hand, Mara peered in the direction Mendigo had come. "I see a Periton," she reported. "No, several. No, a whole herd. Come fast, run." She half climbed, half fell from the boulder, rolling over unforgiving stones. When she landed, rising with a badly skinned elbow and a deep gash in her knee. To the trees," Trask urged, holding his crossbow ready. Dugan grabbed Kendra's hand, and they clambered across the stony summit until they reached dirt and trees. Looking back, Kendra saw a large winged stag gliding about 50 feet above the hilltop. The stag had a massive rack of black horns, golden fur, and feathered wings and hindquarters. Other Perytons promptly soared into view. Kendra counted more than a dozen before she tripped and went sprawling onto a moist mat of old pine needles. A tremendous roar exploded behind them, an ear-splitting imitation of thunder and jet engines exceeding even the mighty bellows Kendra had heard from the demon Bahamut. A Peryton hit the ground near Kendra, sharp hooves gouging the earth, jaws snapping at her, razor teeth missing by inches. Without pause, the Periton bounded skyward, wings unfurling.